Boy, a lot to cover, short period of time to cover it here, folks. I want to go first to Florida. I understand, bro, there's been a shooting in Marion County.
Yes, Marion County, Florida there.
Forest High School, suspected shooter was taken into custody. One individual was shot in the ankle. So is that it, bro, or do we have any follow-ups on this story?
No, that's the latest right now. Just that one student injured, and still more information coming out of Marion County, but no other reports of any other injuries or any other suspects there.
This is interesting because this is the anniversary of Columbine, ladies and gentlemen. The 19th anniversary of Columbine, and one has but to wonder. And of course, and as well as that, be concerned as to whether or not there will be any copycats. All right, folks. I have a whole lot to get into today. We have posted a link on our Facebook page to the memos from Comey, and you need to read them. And you need to read them quickly because they're pretty significant. Like I said, it all boils down to who do you trust. Be it you trust the writings of Comey, or be it you trust the lips of Donald John. Look, it's up to you, your reasons for how you vet and why you trust or don't trust. However, I would trust a guy who has committed, a former military man who has committed as much of his life as he has, and a man who's been vetted time and time again, meaning a man whose past has been vetted. Whether the number of times he's lied has been vetted, as opposed to an individual who has, as we now are finding out, has lied to most of his life, and of course, even the Forbes magazine. Look, you can't be a good quote-unquote negotiator if you don't know how to embellish or just downright lie and make it all part of the negotiations. That's what some would argue. I'll get to that in a minute, but last night, ladies and gentlemen, there was you and Tabari's meeting there regarding spring break solutions. Went pretty decent. How we go?
Pretty well. Pretty good turnout. Not nearly as many spring breakers or younger folks as we would have liked, but this will not be the last time. Looking to go to Biloxi for the next one. But did get to the bottom of what the problems the folks who were attending felt. A lot of vendors were in the house. A couple business owners and some promoters, and some just regular citizens of Gulfport and Biloxi were there. So got to narrow down what they thought the most significant problems were and come up with some solutions to propose to city officials.
You know, my mama used to always say to me, if you let someone else fix your plate, don't complain. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, if you let someone else fix your plate for dinner and they put on cauliflower, roasted cauliflower, maybe some sauteed Brussels sprouts, beets, or anything that you don't like. Now, I happen to like those things, but let's just say what she was saying was, when someone else fixes your plate, then you can't complain. Now, if you fix your plate, it's up to you, but if you allow someone else to fix your plate, then what are you going to complain about? You let them fix it? Which brings me to this. If, in fact, some of you who support spring break don't speak up, then stop complaining. Stop telling me about what they are doing and start asking yourself, what are you doing about it? And I see this time and time again, particularly with those of you who participate in spring break or go to spring break. You want to come, you complain after the fact instead of doing what is necessary before the fact. If you've got folks coming here, ladies and gentlemen, trust me on this. Now's the time to make suggestions and come up with solutions and fight for next year. This is going to happen again. You know, I said to the audience last night, this is 20 years old. First spring break, should I say, the first so-called black spring break happened in 1999. But you realize spring break was going on before then. Let me just tell you, this was, look, the Gulf Coast right there in front of what used to be, let's say you had the Buena Vista. The Buena Vista, Edgewater. See, what's now the Coliseum and Edgewater used to be the Edgewater Hotel. And, of course, the Buena Vista was down in Biloxi. Good area there in Biloxi for spring breakers. That little section there right in front of the Coliseum was a pretty busy section with a whole lot of hotels, not to mention Howard Johnson's, some older hotels. I'm trying to think of the name of the other one that was there. I know the Holiday Inn was there way back when. But that was the hot spot, bro. I'm talking going back to the 60s and 70s. Let me tell you, if police are concerned about traffic now, it was far worse then.
Yeah.
Trust me on this. For those of us who know and had to travel Highway 90, you just avoided that area because, look, there were so many little Caucasian girls out there in bikinis, and at that time, ladies and gentlemen, Negroes were not allowed on the beach. Don't play like me like you don't know this. Those of you who are now sheriffs and chiefs of police, you know who you are. Come on. Let's not play games. There is plenty of evidence to show that this is something that we've dealt with before, but we dealt with it differently. I mean, there was a Sykes gas station just to the other side of the Broadwater, which had the Blue Room. I mean, folks, let me just tell you, for those of you who weren't around before Camille, and those of you who don't remember before even Katrina, every little gap was filled up with something on the beach. Look, there was a time, folks, when the Gulf Coast really was redneck, what was it, the redneck...
Rivera, brother?
Rivera, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, of course, they claim it over in Alabama, but I'm going to tell you, there was something to be said about it here because we had the oak trees and we were that close to salt water and the like. But I mean, every little spot. At one time, ladies and gentlemen, there at the corner of Cowan Road and Highway 90 was a huge casino. Every block was imported. At the corner courthouse and Highway 90, there was a huge casino before Patton shut it down. Edgewater, where you have Edgewater Mall, was a casino right there in the hotel, one of the largest hotels in Mississippi. Then there was the Broadwater and the Marina. Oh, we were rolling, bro. I'm telling you.
Sounds fantastic.
Oh, it was. There were strip clubs. I mean, the first disco, African-American disco that was held, I did it, and I did it at a place called the Gringo Room. Which was, absolutely, I was, well, I don't know what street that is. I can't remember. It's where Treasure Bay, the street that runs next to Treasure Bay.
Gringo Room?
It was called the Gringo Room, but that's not what it used to be. Bobby, what's his name? I know some of you are listening are gonna. It became a strip club, is what it became, and then I transformed it into kind of a discotheque, and working with Gene Jernigan there, who, by the way, passed suspiciously. And his buddy passed by them. They do it, D'Angelo. It was an infamous time. The Dixie Mafia was entrenched here, one could argue. I mean, you had the Fiesta Club across the street, and of course the Sun and Sand, and the arch that went over Highway 90. My dad actually was the cement finisher who finished that arch at the very top, where there was a red light. So that was, it was bustling down here. No problem with law enforcement. Didn't have to block off anything. There was no urgency for emergency. Come on, you remember this, Chief? Many of you do. You were around back then, or maybe you weren't. Maybe I should show you some pictures. Maybe you should go to the Reed House or there at George Orr and take a look at that exhibit. Oh, there are plenty of pictures to show what it looked like, especially that area that became, look, it's on postcards. Literally, it was the way the coast advertised itself before you even had the Visitors Bureau. At that time, you had Wally Hall and the Tourism Commission there at the Coliseum. I was around, I know, I'm not going to pretend. No problem. And listen to me very closely. At that time, you had even less parking areas. Less parking areas. Most of it was in front of hotels there on the other side of the beach. Little small mom and pop shops from the Alamo Inn to, you name it, Confederate Inn. And there in Seagull, all of them, they were all sprawled out. And of course, it was just down the way from the Friendship House. I mean, when you look at what the coast used to be, folks, I'm going to tell you, it was tantamount to, well, not quite Vegas, but at the very least, Baby South Beach, given the hotels in its proximity, bro. Emerald Beach Hotel was right there where you see the strip of the across from what is now Big Play and all of that. Had even a amusement park right there as well. Oh yeah, where you see the Baja and all that stuff.
Yeah.
An amusement park there. Ferris wheel and everything. Put golf right there. See, I guess this baffles you guys because you. I know, it just said, how could it have been? Well, it was.
Yeah.
No traffic problems. No complaints. Well, you probably had complaints, but guess what? Let me just tell you, the businesses weren't complaining at all. It was wide open, bro. Everything was cool. People were rolling, even if the Negroes didn't go to that beach. Maybe that was the reason for why everything was cool, one could argue. Then immigration happened. And after 1968, things began to change. And boy, did they change between then and 1999. And boy, that was an invasion in 1999. And you had Black Spring Break. And actually the name came, ladies and gentlemen, primarily because, needless to say, up until that time, it was White Spring Break by demand. Demand by the cities, you see. You get that. You didn't have to say White Spring Break. It was a white beach. When I hear people say that, oh yeah, why can't it be white? Well, if you said White Spring Break, you'd be jumping up and down. Well, it was White Spring Break. Just ask the folks at Beauvoir. I mean, come on. You know, there are people who really expect for Rip Daniels, who was here during that time, to somehow or another ignore it. And there are some of you Negroes who somehow allow it. Stop allowing it. It's all part of your heritage. There was a struggle. There was a fight. We won. So last night, there was a meeting to come up with solutions for spring break. And I'm going to tell you, those of you in law enforcement, if you remember what I'm talking about, when there was not a great complaint about traffic, see what they did. And see whether or not what you're doing right now makes it worse. I hear you. Oh, yeah, but it wasn't 70,000. You can't prove that by me. Ole Miss and Mississippi State and USM turned out in droves. From the Bees Road all the way down to the Buena Vista, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me on this. That beach was thick. You just didn't take Highway 90. Which is why, ladies and gentlemen, my dad used to do a cut through Keesler Air Force Base. We would come through Judge Seco, what was it, Gate 2, maybe? I don't know. Gate 3? Nick Hall Jewelers was just on the other side. He would do a cut through. You can go to the base then. All you had to do was just let you go through. You go through Gate 2 or 3 there on Judge Seco, and you'll come out on Pass Road, Gate 7. And by the way, it stayed that way for a while.
Just open.
Into the 1970s.
Just ride all the way through.
You can ride all the way through it. Actually, I used to go to the Quadrangle, and I used to have concerts and discos there. Used to have it at the NCO, at the Airman's Club. Oh, I made big money out there. Really? Oh, it was rolling. The coast was rolling. And if some of you guys out there remember this, give us a call. Because I want to give you an example, something that you can hang your hat on and say, well, let's just compare. Why then it was this way and why now it's that way? Now, I was about to tell you there was a minimal amount of far less parking spaces than you have now on Highway 90. I mean, it was bumper-to-bumper traffic with very slow cars, too, by the way. Big old clunky cars, I'm going to tell you. And significant, the traffic lights, of course, weren't synchronized. No problem. Did that. It worked. We survived it. And so now here we are. Now, which is why that meeting was so significant last night, and which is why, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now to own up, bone up, and do what is necessary to further tourism in this so-called resort area. Now, I'm going to do a hard turn here because I got someone contacted me by phone last night regarding this information, had questions about it. I asked an individual to leave that meeting. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you, we asked media not to be there because we didn't want anyone grandstanding. Sometimes when media is around, the newspaper or television, people will stand up and do some grandstanding. We wanted unfettered response from the people who attended, and we did. You know, we didn't want them feeling that somehow or another this is all some kind of put on. And we didn't want media reporting what was said and the solutions that we came up with before we were ready to offer these solutions. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, some of the media acquiesced and they left. And there was one individual who decided to stay, and I asked him what his name was, and he indicated his name was Greg Stewart, and he was with Beauvoir. Well, I waited until the appropriate time, and then I said to Greg Stewart, who I have talked to on this show a time or two, I indicated to him that no, I didn't think this was a place for him to be. He indicated that he was a vendor and that he was there at Beauvoir, and he wanted to offer, because they're there and they have major property on the beach, that he wanted to be a part of it. To which I said to him, as long as you have that banner up and you support that banner, this is not the place for you. He had to go, bro.
Had to go, man.
Now, I had someone to call and criticize my asking him to leave.
Oh, really?
I'll accept the criticism. This person was not Caucasian. This person felt that, okay, by doing that somehow or another I was discriminating. I was discriminating because did not want to have someone sitting in that meeting who discriminates. And if by chance anybody who supports that banner, if you think that they don't discriminate, you think again. Because they are denying the participation of my ancestors in our history. Every time you see that banner, be it at Beauvoir or anywhere else, that's what it says. It denies, ladies and gentlemen, a United States first and foremost. Secondly, it denies the contributions of my ancestors. It is nothing but discrimination. We need to tell that mayor over there in Ocean Springs that. So Greg Stewart, you and the rest of you, Payne and the rest of you guys, let's not play like may like. And by the way, while I'm at it, I sent them a letter right after Hurricane Katrina, and asked them to admit and put up a very huge sign like they have the battle flag there that indicates that Beauvoir was built by forced labor, enslaved labor. Hundreds of Negroes built it. There is not one acknowledgement of that at all, not even in the museum. They don't want to acknowledge it. However, it's the last vestige. The only significant importance of Beauvoir, ladies and gentlemen, is that it was built. It had nothing whatsoever to do with the Civil War. Nothing whatsoever to do with the Confederacy except that it was in it. The man who built it lost it. Tax sale. Just saying. Jeff Davis didn't build it. Had a library there, didn't, and spent most of the time in New Orleans. I'm just telling you what I know. I know more about your history, Greg, than you do, and you know it. You'd be embarrassed. But you're too arrogant to be embarrassed. That goes with that bigotry thing. So yeah, ma'am, I asked him to leave. I'll do it again. And anyone else who think like they could play like, may like, everything is all right when they are represented by the single most recognizable symbol of tyranny. We don't play like, man, oh yeah, well I can help out. We can just get along and we can charge, we can charge, make some money off these Negroes there when they come.
So you want us to tell our people to go park or go and frequent your establishment that was built with slave labor that you won't even acknowledge?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. And if you got a problem with that, you can contact me. It's okay. I mean, it was Roe and Tabari as employees called that meeting, and so let him have his own meeting. That's not a bad idea, Greg Stewart. How about it? Let's get all the brothers inside Beauvoir.
Let's do it, brother.
All right, I know, I just got a lot of stuff.
Anyway, it's Friday.
You know, I'm going to throw some things out because there's going to be another meeting, just so you know that I'm on the right page here. And for those in law enforcement, I know you're listening, Sheriff Peterson and Chief Miller and Chief Papania. Hope you are. Hope you go back and recollect what I just said regarding how spring break used to be when it was white spring break. Okay? They didn't have to call it white. I mean, Negroes weren't allowed on the beach, so what do you think? Come on, let's not play that. ask yourself, how was it that the ambulances made it from east to west down that busy highway called Highway 90 that didn't have nearly the kind of parking that it has now? Just saying. Folks, every evening around between 4 and 5 o'clock, every highway in New Orleans, every highway in Houston, or every highway in Mobile is jammed up and jelly tight. Right? And often, you know, the ambulances have but one way to get to and fro, east and west, especially in New Orleans, and that is jump on the interstate. That's the quickest way. Well, you ask, well, how do they do it with all that traffic jam? Well, it parts like the Red Sea. I know, on Highway 90 you don't have a quote-unquote service lane everywhere. You're right. However, there's ample room to pull up on the neutral ground at least 1 or 2 tires. I mean, we don't have this. I mean, you do realize there are times when there's jams besides when spring break is there. I mean, like 4th of July in Gulfport. Have you tried that lately? So let's not pretend. Look, and I'm under no pretense. I know if you're getting 70,000 people here at a specific time, then it can be difficult. It's difficult. But I think responding the way we are is a bit rash. I got a few suggestions, and I didn't say this last night. I'm just going to throw them out here. And I'm going to throw this out in hopefully that city fathers and mothers will hear what I'm about to say. I think there's a very great way to pay for what we see there, and as far as the beach, sand, and everything else. And that's this: that all the parking spaces need to be numbered, and those who are coming here, tourists and locals alike, should have the privilege of actually paying for parking. Hang on. At certain times, particularly if we also offer public parking. This is not unusual. If you go down to Destin, or if you go down to other beaches. Even out at around Orange Beach, you'll find something similar where you can have paid parking, and it's actually run by the government in some cases. It's not unusual. It's just a means of maintaining money and, of course, security and maintaining the beach. Now, it's not something that you do all the time, but when you're having major events such as this one, then it offers the tourists and the ability to actually pay. You can have all-day parking for $10. Now, again, you have to have paid free parking somewhere else, somewhere north of I-10, maybe even off of I-10. I mean, north of Highway 90 or maybe even off 10. I-10. It would behoove the city fathers, Gulfport and Biloxi, to have huge parking swaths in close proximity. It does something else, too. You see, having 70,000 people is nothing for Biloxi. They do it. They have about that many every time you have Mardi Gras. Where do they park? Where do they go? What you have is a managed parade, and that's the thing you've got to do in this case with spring break. You have to have a managed parade, which means, ladies and gentlemen, you have a parade route, which one of the attendees said last night. Smart thing. There are some individuals who come there just to ride back and forth in parade. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. So you offer them that route to parade. Some of those have very nice cars and so forth. And I'm going to tell you, I can't think of a better place than the 1.5 miles that encircles the Coliseum on the Coliseum grounds. You actually have about 1.5 miles of roadway that just kind of meanders around the Coliseum and Convention Center around the back. Then you offer those folks registration, just as what Cruising the Coast does. The cars register. They become registered. They pay a fee. Inside that fee is also parking. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a way for cities to minimize the cost of even the security. You're going to get that bill soon. You're going to hear that coming from law enforcement. Oh, here's what spring break cost. And all one has to do is go to the hospitality and the innkeepers website very soon. Linda Hornsby will publish the amount of tax revenue, and especially watch what's called the Rev Par. Rev Par basically it says the rates, how much, what was the demand for the average room rate. That compared with how it usually is. On an average is this, but on those 2 days it was that. I guarantee you Rev Par is going to be sky high because the room rates went up.
What's Rev Par again?
Well, it's the average rate. In other words, it is the rate today compared to the difference between the average rate and how much the rates went up on that day, right? The return. She can explain it better. But in other words, this accounts for what some people call is the gouging. And it's not gouging, it's availability. Rooms are based on availability, like air travel. In other words, if you're 30 days out and you want to buy a ticket, it's cheaper. But as you get closer, if you're 10 days out, it's more because more of the seats are filled. So as the seats get filled, the demand is greater, right? And the price goes up. That's just how it works. It's sort of like standing in line in front of a club. When you started, the admission was $10. By the time you get to the door, because the club is almost full, the club owner may charge you $30. And if you're foolish enough to pay that, then you get in. That's how it works. It just depends on how bad you want it.
And he got the cost of 3 patrons for 1.
Well, there you go. By the way, in my day, that couldn't have happened. Had I tried to raise the rate, they would have just walked away. Man, it's only $10. You advertise it on the ticket.
Man, he paid $10. He paid $10. I ain't paying $10. I ain't paying nothing.
All right. So there's an idea. I do feel, ladies and gentlemen, that this has not been necessary to have emergency lanes in both east and west. I just don't. And that's going to come out in the wash. We'll chat about it, chiefs of police and sheriff. We will. There's a way to do this whereby it's more encouraging and you can move the traffic better. I can tell you that. There's no doubt in my mind. There's a very great possibility that it might be necessary even to turn both lanes going one direction at a certain location. Just think about it a minute or two. There's a lot of ideas, and a lot of ideas that's being thrown around that I think can work. All right, folks, let's get to it. It's Friday, which means we talk about whatever you want to talk about. Boy, it's incredible. I want to go. Let's start at the top. Now, folks, I told you way back when. Let me turn this up here. I told you what it was going to come down to when Donald John got elected. Why there is the investigation and the Russian investigation. It all started with a lie. Here it is right here.
I have no relationship with Putin. I do have a relationship with him. I have no relationship with him. He has said nice things about me over the years. I remember years ago, he said something many years ago. He said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him.
When I went to Russia with the Miss Universe pageant, he contacted me and was so nice.
I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. I have never spoken to him on the phone, no.
All right. I told you that right there would perk up the ears of any person in law enforcement. A person who is genuinely committed to law enforcement and the Constitution will go, well, why did he lie? Did he or did he not? And here's a guy at the time, he's the president. And these things transpired before he became the president. So why did he lie? So Comey's memo, February 8th, 2017, is quite telling. The president was talking to him about the leakers. And Comey wrote this. The president brought up the golden showers thing and said it really bothered him if his wife had any doubt about it. And I'm actually reading. It's his quote now. This is it right here. See? Now, you can go to our Facebook page and you can pull up how to get to this, or even ask the actual memos. He did explain, the president then explained, as he did at our dinner, that he hadn't stayed overnight in Russia during the Miss Universe trip. Twice during this part of the conversation, Reince Priebus tried to interject a comment about the, whatever it is, it's redacted, and why it was even in there. But the president ignored it. The president said the hookers thing is nonsense, but that Putin had told him we have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world, end quote. By the way, that was in quote. Putin had told him, quote, we have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world.
We have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world here.
He did not say when Putin had told him this, and I don't recall blank. That also is redacted. Well, he was asked, Comey was asked about this by a reporter there, about when did Donald John talk to Putin? Now listen at this response.
The president was conveying this to you at the White House.
In the Oval Office.
And he told you that he'd had a personal conversation with President Putin about hookers?
Yes.
Did you believe him, or did you think he was speaking hyperbolically?
Didn't seem to be speaking hyperbolically.
Do we otherwise know that the president had had personal conversations with Vladimir Putin at that point?
I can't recall. I think there was public reporting that he had spoken to Vladimir Putin as sort of a welcome, congratulations on taking office thing at that point. I'm not suggesting they talked about how beautiful the hookers were in Russia, but I do know there was at least one publicly reported conversation.
Well, this is in quotation. But the president ignored him. The president said, in quotes, the hookers thing, in close quotes, is nonsense. But that Putin had told him, quote, we have some of the most beautiful hookers in the world, end quote. Now that's coming from Comey. That combined with the fact that the dossier, and by the way, he talks about that here, much of which has been confirmed. Whenever you hear Hannity or Russian Limbaugh say it's debunked, you need to ask him, so what part is debunked? Like you ask them what part is truth, ask them what part is debunked. You need to do that. You won't, though, I'm sure. They won't let you on the air. This is all going to find its way to Costa Rica sooner or later. Just trust me on this. For those of you who know anything about Costa Rica, you know that there was a Russian hooker invasion over the last 5-10 years. There's a lot of brothels there in Costa Rica, folks. Don't ask me how I know it. I know it. But I guarantee you there's going to be a connection there. Hang on, 2 cents, you're next. We'll be back.
The Jackson Advocate newspaper has been the voice of black Mississippians since 1938. The Jackson Advocate wants to come into your home each week